Thank you for joining us and welcome to another episode of Legal Unicorns. As those who listen to the podcast regularly know, the purpose of the podcast is to interview astounding lawyers, outstanding and astounding, across the African continent who are doing things slightly differently and taking their career in a very inspiring way and inspiring direction. I am delighted this week to be joined by my good friend, Karien Holtzkampf. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, it's lovely to be here, Rob.
Karien is, for those of you, for full disclosure, for those that are listening, Karien is a very good friend of my wife's, one of her best friends, and is someone that I met nearly 20 years ago. I've watched her career as a lawyer in South Africa take shape, and in fascinating ways. And as you've pointed out off camera a second ago, and we'll get into, you're someone as a professional who tech has really followed you, or you've followed tech, and I'm really excited to dig into that and find out more about that as we go forward. You've got a vast background across a number of different sectors within the law. Which we will get onto as we track your career to where you're going, and obviously more recently, you have moved into what I'm coining as the agritech space with the brilliant earthworm invention under your own firm, AgriRevolution, which again is so inspiring to show the listeners that are watching and listening, whether it's on Spotify or Google or wherever it may be, that though their careers can also take interesting directions and they can take advantage of opportunities that come around. So thanks again for joining. I really want to dive straight in, and again, off camera, I've said I've known you for nearly 20 years, but I don't know that much about you. So where did you grow up? Your family? Tell us all about where you started.
Sure. I grew up when I was little, my dad was at Clickatell. So spent some years there before we moved to Stellenbosch. He started his own business. And so I spent my schooling there and then went to university in Stellenbosch too.
Okay. So for those who are listening aren't familiar, I get the pronunciation right, Constantia is a wine farm, and your dad was a farm manager there, was he?
He was, yeah. So he's a trained winemaker, and he was a farm manager. The farm manager for, I think he was appointed when he was only 25.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's actually crazy. And so a lot of what you see on the farm today were things that my dad had put in place. So it's,
amazing.
It's always wonderful for us to go back.
And anyone that is listening from overseas, that is like one of the places that you must. In fact, if you get on a coach, it will take you there.
It will take you there.
It's a beautiful setting. Many people get married there. It's an unbelievable part of the Western Cape. Not too far out of Cape Town as well, which is nice. Okay, so you grew up in Stellenbosch. Now, I know this, but your mum, your dad, and your brother, right?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. So, and everybody's still in this part of the world.
Yeah, still, well, kind of Cape Town, Stellenbosch-ish.
Yeah. So you went to school where? Stellenbosch?
Stellenbosch, yeah. So Akerstad Primary, and then Bloemhofgoals High School for high school. So
before moving to Stellenbosch,
and then went to Stellenbosch University. Yeah.
Now, because I'm not looking at your CV, but did you study an LLB straight away?
B.Comm law first.
Okay.
So
You laugh. Tell us the story.
Yeah. So when you first asked me to do this podcast, I was like, oh my God, Rob, I am probably not the most lawyery lawyer.
Wonderful.
So I didn't set out to study law. I wanted to be a businesswoman. I don't think I had any idea what that meant, but I hated accounting. So,
as many of us do.
So B.Comm law was kind of my way of trying to find, a business foundation, but also with, I loved Ally McBeal and loved to read. So I thought law may give me some other options. And so I started off doing B.Comm law. And the LLB, again, wasn't really because of my fierce need to become a lawyer. It was rather because it would give me 2 more years at university rather than just one if I'd done some like a honors or something. So it kind of happened by mistake, but I'm very happy that it did.
I appreciate the honesty because, again, there's a lot of people that listen to this that will be in a similar position or they have they'll be in their careers now, but they will have a similar story whereby, I meet so many lawyers that didn't really set out to study the law, and kind of found themselves in the law. But it's interesting that you, even from an early age, you wanted to be in business, and obviously law is such a massive part of that. And I guess, you mentioned Ally McBeal, and there's a lot of people that I interview that talk about those kind of shows, and latterly nowadays it would be Suits or something like that. But people don't. People always say it with a bit of a joke, or like a bit of a jovial. Oh, I used to watch it on TV, or LA Law if they're a bit older. But that's hugely powerful. Like the stuff that you watch, and then you go, I want to do that. But obviously, most of the law isn't quite like. I was going to say,
I think that's also why it's such a big shock when you then actually enter the world of law and realize it's nothing like it.
It's nothing like it.
Absolutely
not. Way more fun on TV. Well, that's good, because again, that gives us an idea of how you were shaped, and you obviously took to it as well. It's not like you were studying something that was a hard slog. You could see, certainly maybe the B.Comm law, the way it's set up, from my limited understanding, is that it's not as law-y, if you like, as the LLB. That's a good introduction for you to see the world of business. And is it a bit more practical, I think, isn't it? It's a bit more in the sense of like shows you the business.
Listen, I don't think university is very practical generally. But so I wasn't a great student either, if we're being honest here. I was a terrible student. I very rarely went to class, to my shame, looking back at it now.
You're not the only one. Many people listening to this exactly the same.
But having found out at a late age that I have ADHD, I now realize what part of the problem was. What it did give me, though, is the ability to hyper-focus. So I was great at kind of late night when everyone else is in bed. Then I could, go, okay, I have less hours than chapters left. And so then I would just speed read. And somehow, by some kind of miracle, I managed to get 2 degrees. But
amazing. Yeah, but that tells a lot about your character, and also the way that you learn and you consume information, and it's probably stood you in very good stead as your career has gone along. And again, I keep saying this, that there are many thousands of people that will be listening to this exactly the same. And maybe if they're at an earlier stage, maybe they're studying, maybe they're just out of university or in the workplace, and they haven't quite got to where the realization part yet, where, and they will do later on, but it's an important lesson to learn. And it shows that you're very adaptable. You sort of adapted the way you are to what was in front of you, and you got through it and got 2 degrees. And I like the point about, doing the LLB, because it gives you 2 extra years, because I know how much fun you ladies were having at university.
We really
were. The stories that I hear quite often, which is great. But that's really, really important to understand, because it's the basis of who you are, really, or certainly the person I know.
And I think it was also, listen, my parents were both the first in their families to go to university. And so it was never a question that we would have to go, because it really made such a massive difference in their lives, coming from small towns, and really having to make that happen for themselves. And so they really wanted to give us that opportunity. And my mom had actually, they also didn't want us to have student debt like they had. And my mom had actually, when I was in my final years in high school, she actually went to the university and got a job at the university library, because I don't know if it still works like that, but in those days, the university, one of the perks for working for the university is that they paid class fees for your children. And so
she got the job there on the basis of you and your brother.
Exactly. I mean, so she had a kind of half-day job, so they didn't pay for so it wasn't all free, but it certainly made a big difference, and they were then able
to. Things we do for our kids.
Exactly.
She literally just changed jobs and careers, and went.
She ended up working there for 20 years. I think it was a great move for her too. But I mean, that really is what she was prepared to do to make sure that we got an education. Yeah. But so my point is, I think the late night studies, a lot of it was just driven by fear of, disappointing them, costing them another year's worth of money that I knew that they didn't have.
It's not to be underestimated as well, because I think if I think back to myself at university as well, a lot of the things that got me through it was the fear of letting mum and dad down, to be honest, as you were cramming late at night and going, I got to get this done, I've got to get this done. I cannot turn around to mum and say I failed. Yeah, but whatever. If it worked, so that's perfect. Okay, so you're studying, and you've got through with your 2 degrees, and you're ready to start out in the big wide world. And is this when you went to London?
Yes. So at that point, obviously, everyone around me, well, it felt to me like everyone around me was doing VAC work and trying to get articles, and I had no idea to where to even start. There was no pool for me to try and do any of that. So because I didn't know what to do next, I went to London, and I was very lucky that some of my friends, including your beautiful wife, had the same plan. So, so...
A fear of missing out. Each of you said, if you're going, I'm going. If you're going, I'm definitely going.
Absolutely. And so... I'd been working, we'd all actually been waitressing, and I'd been doing wine tastings at Neil Ellis and Beierskloof throughout university. So I'd saved some money. And my parents, as a graduation gift, they said that they would pay for my ticket to London. So we arrived there. We all kind of slept on people's couches for the first few weeks. And then when we got jobs, we managed to get a tiny little flat, and 4 of us had a 2-bedroom flat where we shared double beds.
Again, as South Africans and Australians and Kiwis do when they come to... But it's so lucky it was only 4 of you in a house. It's typically like 9 to 15.
I know. So. No, we were really lucky. It was actually a really lovely place. So I think I probably spent 6 months sleeping next to your wife.
Yeah, well, I mean... It's good that you did, because and good that you came to London, because otherwise I would have never have met her. Yeah. So thanks for that.
Pleasure.
So obviously, for those who don't know, I don't know if it's still available to South Africans, but that would have been part of a 2-year visa program that used to exist. I don't know if it's still does.
I don't think it does either. So in those days, you could get this 2-year working holiday visa. If you were, I suppose, like under 25 or something, it was age. There was an age restriction. And so, we were very, very fortunate that we had that opportunity. Yes.
Yeah. And this for me is, and I'm not going to talk through all of the jobs that you've ever had, but I want to pick out certain ones which I think may have shaped where you were headed. From your LinkedIn profile, at least, the first key job in London was with totallylegal.com, which is still going, I believe. And it's a job website for lawyers, but at that time would have been probably the market leader
absolutely
across the UK, maybe even further than that, specifically for lawyers for jobs. Yeah,
absolutely. And it was so serendipitous. I arrived in London, and literally on day 2 started going, I probably have to send my CV out. And the first job in an actual, like a physical newspaper, saw an ad for graduates with a law background, and I thought I was going to meet a legal recruiter. But when I got to the interview, it was Bernard Howard, the founder of totallylegal.com, and he was looking for a kind of all-round office manager, whatever, did everything. But it was such an amazing job, because there I got to see the back end of a website, and I mean that was 2004. So, I mean, it was early days for the internet. We were checking our emails once a week or, kind of thing. Yeah. So it was really early days for that kind of thing. And he was such a visionary man. It was this tiny little company. We were 4 or 5 people in the company. He was so ahead of his time. He had a South African guy sitting in Greece doing the website development.
Which is now the norm.
It's just now the norm, but then was extremely, extremely unusual. And it was such a great learning curve. And I think my love for tech, really started blossoming then. I remember buying this book, Goldmine for Dummies. So he had this kind of CRM system, like, I don't know, Salesforce today. but obviously not cloud-based in those days. And we figured out how to do mail merges. And so I read this book, figured it out. So we got my housemates in the evenings. We sat there with the Legal 500 and like whatever financial books. And because we also had totallyfinancial.com.
Yes.
And we would input the names of every director of every law firm with their contact details into Goldmine, and then do these massive mail mergers. And I think that was really instrumental in, I think the lawyer.com purchased totallylegal.com a few years later for quite a big sum.
Yeah.
I
thought it was a different media group, but definitely got bought by a media group.
Yeah. And so it was a fascinating time to be really in the heart of a tech startup.
Yeah, because for those listening and aren't familiar with totallylegal.com, if you think back what now would have been 19 years, right? Yeah. You're talking about, like you've said there, the real beginnings of the internet. Those who are a bit younger than you and I think that it's been around forever, but it hasn't. And the fact is, you mentioned there with the mail merge, these things hadn't even been invented yet and are now used regularly.
Yeah.
But also for you, because totallylegal.com is still a very, a powerful brand, especially up in Europe. But you were there right at the beginning, and seeing that startup, seeing that being part of what it takes to build not just a company but also a tech platform must have been quite inspiring for you.
It was, and it was such a big lesson in marketing. I mean, the ideas that the sales, I want to say team, but it was like one person, one marketing person, and Bernard and me. that was the company. But I mean, the marketing things we did. I mean, we were handing out flyers in Canary Wharf. We were traveling. I was traveling up in my ball gown up to the law colleges, in Oxford and Cambridge, to go and sponsor the bar for a for a dinner there or whatever. Yeah, I was having a lovely time. But my point is it was just an all round incredible learning experience and so inspiring.
And for you as well, it must have again, I don't want to overuse the word inspiring, but it must have sort of set in motion something about you that you like that sort of tech environment, that startup environment that kind of has followed you around.
Absolutely. And I mean, remember my father was an entrepreneur. He started his own business while he was still at Constantia. He started his own soil preparation business. And he then, we'll talk about AgriRevolution later, but he had this incredible idea when I was in high school that he, so he'd been running his own business for a long time and then started pursuing this dream. And so I think entrepreneurship is in my blood a bit somehow, I think. And so, yes, I was definitely very drawn to that.
And people like you said, was it Bernard?
Bernard, yeah, absolutely.
And sort of visionaries like that who can see things. I mean, it's so funny that someone who's driven by that and has that entrepreneurial spirit sees that advert in the newspaper, which I'm not sure they do anymore. I don't know. Do they still advertise jobs in the newspaper?
No, and I don't think,
especially coming from a website that applies.
I think it was only because it was his own job that he
I mean, you think that he put it on his own, but it's not for a lawyer. Well, kind of, yeah. Okay, so look, you had a good couple of years in the UK, as I know, because I was there for the back end of it.
Yeah.
And then you came back to South Africa, where you moved to Joburg, right?
Yeah. So that was also an odd story. So after I did a stint of caring for a while. I decided to leave Total Legal to do a bit of traveling, ended up doing caring for a bit, and then joined another kind of tech startup, EnergyQuote. Thought that I would stay in London forever, was waitressing on the side to be able to pay for my 4-year working visa. But my parents really wanted me to come back to South Africa to come and do my articles. They were kind of like, just get the qualification behind you and then you can go and do whatever you want, but just,
it's a fair point.
Just do this. And
a lot of people would have heard that from their parents.
Yeah.
Just get the articles.
Just get the articles.
Become a qualified attorney.
And so I was very resistant to that. But then, again, very serendipitously, with my dad having this invention, he had registered a patent and he was speaking to his patent attorney, who at the time was practicing at Kisch, and who said to them, and so they were talking about, my dad's daughter who didn't want to come back and, whatever. And so he said, well, one of his fellow directors from Kisch will be in London next week. Perhaps I should send my CV in because they're still looking for article clerks for the 2006 intake. And this was beginning of December of 2005.
So it's starting.
And so did that and got an email saying, can I meet this person at a coffee shop in London? They would like to interview me. I was nervous as hell. I didn't know whatever. So I started furiously reading up about intellectual property law. Luckily, I had intellectual property law as in my final year as an elective. Started reading up case law, whatever, just to try and prepare. Went into this coffee shop. I remember the suit that I got especially for this interview, and in walked the most fantastic man. I can never stop smiling when I think of him. Brian Wimpy is a legend in the South African trademark world, and red hair, earrings. So not the Johannesburg lawyer I expected at all. And we just hit it off. And a week later, I was on a plane back home to come and do my articles.
With a job offer to do articles with him.
With him in Sandton, yeah. And
like you say, serendipitous that your dad is speaking about with his attorney, and then he happens to be going the following week, and I bet your parents were very pleased.
Very pleased.
So, and were you ready to come back and ready to do this? Obviously, and thought, I can do this. Largely, I guess a lot of it's driven by the fact that you've met Brian Wimpy, and then you've gone, well, I can get on board with this.
Absolutely, and also I think that one of the reasons that I didn't go into law is that I had no understanding of what the possibilities were. I know some of your other guests have also spoken about this. Like, we were not prepared at all to understand what the different career paths are, what the different whatever. I loved intellectual property law when I did it as an elective, but I somehow thought that to become a patent attorney, you have to have some kind of technical or science qualification and an LLB. And so, but I thought all intellectual property attorneys needed to have that. And so I didn't think it was an option for me.
And if no one's told you.
And no one's ever told me. And when this then became an option, I was like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that point about the sort of not really being 100% clear on what career paths a lawyer can take or what it really means. I mean, it's a mixture of your age and lack of exposure to really how the world works. But I've always said this, and I don't mind saying it publicly. I've said it to the law firms the law schools that I've spoken at with the deans of law, is that you really need to do more about speaking to people about what careers are on offer, because there are so many, and even more so now. But like you say, other guests that we've had on the Unicorns podcast have also spoken about, I don't know what I can do. But it's nice that you, again, very similar in terms of, I can think of my own career. A lot of it was driven by really wonderfully meeting the right people at the right time that really bring something out in you, which obviously at Kisch, Brian did. Then, now Kisch, for those who are listening, don't know, leading IP firm here, was called DM Kisch, is now Kisch.
Yeah, so it used to be DM Kisch in those days, now Kisch. They're the oldest IP firm in South Africa. And they, I think, very much deliberately did not want to grow too big, so it was a lovely environment, and Brian was an excellent teacher and such a great mentor, and with a very hands-off approach that is really the style that I like. Don't
be micromanaged, actually let you develop your
and really and I think different to many other article clerks, he also pulled me into some really big matters and let me run with things that he put a lot of trust in me, obviously overseeing things, but not I want to say fixing grammar in my emails, really just guiding from a real mentoring perspective. And so that
managing from this, overseeing, but allowing you to not so much make mistakes, but allowing you to grow within
absolutely.
the role.
And I think that was also absolutely critical. because that also allowed me to basically write my trademark exams. The trademark practitioners exams are notoriously seen as difficult because they're practical exams. And because, by the end of my articles, or even before then, I had done so much and had the opportunity to really get my hands dirty, I was able to pass those in my second year.
The exams are very much like, if you were given this scenario, what would you do? And if you haven't done that, then, but you had, which is amazing.
And so that was really amazing.
Yeah, I know from our experience in recruitment and some of the work that I've done since I've been here, that Kisch lawyers tend to be very, very good, very strong, very well trained, and that also feeds into what you're talking about there. Once you decided to leave there, you joined what was then called Deneys Reitz, right? Which again is another firm that doesn't exist anymore. It's now part of the Norton Rose group, but I know for a fact that it was a firm that was incredibly highly thought of. I mean, if you worked at Deneys Reitz, then you are a good lawyer, right?
Yeah. So I loved Kisch. And for a long time, I thought that I would grow old there. But then at some point, I think it is this business-minded something in me started getting restless. And so I actually started speaking to people outside of law about going into branding strategy or advertising, whatever. But it was quite sobering that I would have to start after I've just gone through articles and just, getting a proper lawyer, attorney salary, to have to go back to kind of being, a beginner was something I couldn't really wrap my head around at that point in time. And so then I decided I should at least then just try and get some more commercial law experience. And that's really what prompted the move to Deneys Reitz. And again, my career has been very weird. I think I always feel as though, you get momentum and then I always know when it's the end of something. And when I get that feeling,
they might not know, but
I know. And I also know that somehow an opportunity will arise, and it always does. And so
you trust your gut a lot when it comes to the moves that you make.
Absolutely.
Which is really, really good.
I don't with a lot of other things in my life, which is weird. But yes, with my career, I absolutely did. And so I had met one of the directors of the Deneys Reitz IP team and something that we, some kind of matter we had against them. And so I reached out to her and I said to her, listen, I want to get some commercial experience. If there's ever an opening, please let me know. And she came back to me and said, how serendipitous. She's leaving Deneys Reitz and there is a space. So whatever, send my CV. So I did, ended up there. And as you said, it's a fantastic firm. But it was a difficult fit for me. I think because as an IP lawyer, you charge fees. You don't charge by the hour for most of the work you do. And all of a sudden, I was plunged into this firm where you had to log your hours, which was and
I mean, we're talking sort of 14 years ago or so.
14 years ago, exactly. And for me, I always found charging by the hour the most anti-productive thing you can do.
I think there's many people that will listen to this will 100% agree with that.
And so I found that, I was in a lovely, lovely team in the intellectual property team. Met Dick and Dela, one of my great friends who sadly passed away a few years ago. Had a lovely time there, but I don't think that I was a great fit. Also, those big firms tended to move quite slowly in terms of technology. Yeah. And so at Kisch, they use this IP management tool called Patricia. I think most firms use or did in those days. And while we were there, and with my goldmine experience, I went in going, okay, but why aren't we using this more? And we started kind of replacing physical files with, keeping electronic records, figuring out how to link it to Outlook so that your emails could be pulled into the matter on Patricia automatically, things like that. And then I landed.
We shouldn't dismiss that, because you're talking about stuff that you were thinking about 14, 15 years ago or so, which now for many lawyers out there working would just seem like the norm.
The norm, yeah,
but
absolutely.
It really wasn't.
It
was
really
like,
wasn't, no.
it's again, groundbreaking in the sense of utilizing the technology in front of you. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, and at the time, Kisch was already doing a lot of this. And when, we as the young crowd voiced, possibilities, it was explored, which I loved. Whereas in the bigger kind of ship, it's not so easy to make, that kind of change on the fly, I almost want to say.
Yeah. And this is probably, not really for you to say, but I can certainly say it because I've obviously had a career working with firms of all shapes and sizes. I think you're right there, where one of the things that the bigger firms have always struggled with, maybe they won't as they embrace technology more, but is that sort of those levels of, I loathe to say bureaucracy, but the sheer size of them, to try and get people to start doing things in a slightly different way is sometimes difficult, especially if they're hugely successful. I was having a conversation with someone recently about work-life balance and within law firms, and I said to her, well, it was on the day I think that K&L Gates in the US had just announced record profits for the year of again, don't quote me, but maybe $5 billion. I was like, well, how do you tell a firm that they're doing it wrong?
Well, yeah, exactly.
And it's not about doing it wrong. I suppose with that system, it's about there's other ways of doing it that can speed things up, but it's sometimes harder to get people to come onto your side, but especially if you're a junior lawyer. Again.
And so, but listen, to their credit, I wasn't there long enough to see the fruits of my campaigning, but they did actually get.
There might be some people working there now going, "Oh, it was her."
But I mean, it was a big. They still had everything in physical files, and they, for example, had a folder on the computer called faxes.
Oh, wonderful!
And so every fax that's ever come in just went into the fax thing.
Scanned.
And then they had a fantastic way of naming it so that you could find it again. But, so you could go and search in the fax folder for the reference number or the name or the whatever, and you could find it. And so while we didn't have the system, I started going, okay, let's just start and opening a folder for every matter. And let's just start putting...
Makes sense.
Making an electronic version of what we have in the cupboard for every file. And so... But so again, for me, I think that's kind of I've always been driven to find ways of automating things, ways of better structuring things so that it wastes less of your time, so that it's, that's what technology is for.
Although saying that, there's something about going into a lawyer's office and seeing files everywhere. There's someone I went to see recently, and I'll leave his name out because you know him, but there was files everywhere, and I was like, this must be like a comfort blanket or something, just to feel I can't put them away. They've got to be out. But this, see, that tells me a lot about you as well, and it tells the listeners a lot about the way that you think, and even at an early stage, you were looking at ways to improve things. That could be the entrepreneurial spirit coming out, and you again, from that your father obviously passed down to you. And I think it's important as well because again, I meet thousands of lawyers every year who are stuck sometimes at a firm where they don't know how they can get that creative, unlock that creativity in them, and sometimes it's like I'll say, have you approached it, or are you just assuming that they're not going to listen to your ideas, or perhaps they do need to be in a different place? One thing that has changed, and you will notice, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a second, but you will have noticed the right now we're in a bit of a revolution when it comes to legal tech, and the use of technology in law. We're really at a crossroads where it's do or die, which is wonderful because there's so many tools out there. It is exciting. It's almost like an industry that didn't want to change for so many years realized that they've got so many thousands and millions almost of talented people, and now they've got the best tech. Times are changing, but it's excellent. So you leave practice and you go to F&B.
Yes. So
in the IP side of things.
Yeah. So 6 months into being with Deneys Reitz, maybe even less, I hear that the IP legal advisor at F&B is leaving. they were my client, or Brian's client, when I was at Kisch.
For those who don't know, FNB is one of the large banks here in South Africa.
Yeah. And so, and FNB is part of the First Round Group, so I emailed the head of the First Round Group's legal team.
Straight to the top. Yeah.
He used to be my client. So, and I say to him, listen, I see this person has left.
Hi.
And he says, send your CV. And so 7 months after joining Deneys Reitz, I walk in at FNB, and what an incredible job. Working in,
on the IP side of things.
On the IP side as IP legal advisor. And sitting in a wonderful little, so the bank has legal advisors spread out through all of the departments, but then there's this kind of central team that have these specialist lawyers that kind of serve the whole bank. And so, incredible team there.
Just in terms of the people, but also the environment.
People,
the
environment, the focus on innovation, the I want to say such a big organization, but with such a startup, culture and heart.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the innovation is absolutely, they have this big innovation competition every year. Where, and I suppose today, I don't know how much it is today. I'm sure that they still do it, but in those days, the team, anybody could enter any type of innovation that you thought would help the bank do
internally,
or that could help the bank do something better or faster or make more money or whatever it would be. And then the winning team would get like R1 million.
Even then.
Yeah.
About 10 million right now.
Yeah, and I mean, that was 2010, so it was...
Which given current exchange rate is probably about £5.90, but sadly. But yes.
Especially after last night.
Yes. See, that's brilliant. I didn't know that about FNB. I don't really do a lot of work with them, but the fact that even back then, which is 2009, 2010, is they're fostering innovative thinking across all different departments.
Absolutely.
That's really good to know. One of the things that I was going to ask you, and I always ask the guests this, but you've kind of answered it anyway, is what are some of the decisions and actions that you've taken that you think have attributed to your success so far? But you're already saying it. Like you've whenever you've seen an opportunity, you've gone for it, and you've just not held back. You've not been afraid of no. Which I know that about you anyway, but also it's great for the listeners to hear that, because again, it's something that a lot of lawyers that I deal with, certainly from when I'm doing career advisory work, there's a natural risk aversion with some legal professionals that, the what if question, which is perfectly fine, but sometimes I have to coach them to get over that. Whereas you've got that, you've not been afraid of the no. You've just put yourself out there and said, this is a kind of a direction that I want to go into. And that I'm right? That's you as a person, isn't it? That you're prepared to take a chance.
I think it's the idea of getting a no is much less scary than boredom to me, and I get bored.
That's a really good point, because you said again. I mean, tie back that into something you said about 5 minutes ago, which was about you're quite careful with other aspects of your life, but actually with your career, you're prepared to take a chance. And it'll be partly because boredom is really scary to you, but also because I think you've got a lot of faith in your ability. Clearly,
I think my ability to swim in the deep end, yes, but I think anybody has that. I think people are just scared. But I figure, there are people much less qualified, with much less education, doing much harder things in life. If you're thrown into a situation, you'll figure it out. I mean, there's this woman, Marie Forleo, has this podcast. She has this thing that nothing is unfigure-outable. And
if that's a word.
Yeah.
Take a moment there to change some batteries and cards. But you were just talking about, we were talking about the bravery you've made in your career. And one of the lines you just said there was about boredom is more scary than change for you, which is, again, it's so inspiring for lawyers to hear that, because I find, again, I've spent 2 decades in recruitment now globally, and the issues don't change wherever you go in the world. Is that some lawyers are just a bit frightened to take that next step, and luckily you did. But I know I was going to say, actually, when you said about that, about boredom scaring you, I remember you briefly touched on it earlier when you were in London and you did a bit of caring for a while. You also, unbeknownst to anyone apart from me, you once said to me, I think must have been out for a drink or dinner or something. This is years ago.
Oh,
we were
I'm
in
just
our
scared
20s.
to know what this is going to be.
I said about learning Afrikaans, and you said, "Oh, okay, I can help." And then within a week, you'd gone away and written and typed out a whole almost like phonetic dictionary of how to learn every word in Afrikaans. And I carried that with me everywhere around the world to the point where we came back. And when we moved into our new house a year ago, I still had it.
Oh my word!
And I because there was so much work that went into it. It was like, yeah, you give Karien Holtzkampf 5 minutes and a laptop, and she's produced a whole diary.
I loved doing that. Oh my word!
Well, it didn't go to waste. It went around the world. But that is
your Afrikaans isn't great though. So.
I wasn't say I used it much. I've got to be honest, but I always say that I understand more than I let on.
No, you do. I know you do. I'm just joking. I'm just saying my Afrikaans teaching skills are obviously not.
There's a book in there for you, and when you're next looking for another project. So right, you're this professional. You're developing yourself. You've worked at some great firms. You're learning commercial. You've been in house. You're still driven. You're still challenged. You want challenges, right? I mean, that's what you want. And you've and I'm not going to go through every single job you've ever had, so apologies to those firms that are really, really good that you that we might skip through quickly. But then you joined Clickatell, which is a telecoms company, right? You were there for about 3.5 years or so. Yeah,
but that is actually probably the most pivotal move I ever made. So yeah, so loved F&B, as I said, loved it, and then my husband, now boyfriend at the time, gets a job in Cape Town.
Oh yes, because you were living in Joburg, right? Yeah.
Yes, living in Joburg. So I say to him, okay, go. I will come, but I'm not gonna start sending out CVs and stuff. This job is too important to me.
Yeah.
But if an opportunity presents itself, then I will join you. And so we actually rent out our flat in Joburg. I move into my uncle's house in Joburg. Samuel moves down. We rent a house here. We commute. And a month in, he's out with a friend who's kind of, you're done in Cape Town with Karien. And he says that, anyway, he knows of someone that may have a job for me. And it turns out that he is friends with the then finance director, I suppose, of Clickatell. Have my first Skype interview sitting on my bed in Joburg.
13 years ago?
13 years ago, yeah.
Trailblazer.
Absolutely.
Trailblazer.
And also with their CFO was in the US at the time, so kind of a global interview, we'll say. It was lovely. Joined Clickatell, and it was absolutely amazing. That real kind of Silicon Valley startup culture. They had just gotten their second round of funding from Sequoia, who also funded Yahoo and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And
the CEO is also from Cape Town, although...
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I mean, Clickatell is probably one of the biggest South African startup success stories. And Peter de Villiers and his brother Cassie and their friends started this company. And I mean, do yourself a favor and go and search for some interviews that they did about how they started. It's such an incredible story, literally starting in a garage, putting cell phones together to send messages from one SIM card to multiple phones, etc. And now they are, definitely a leader in kind of text-based communications, I suppose, across the world. And they've only recently closed another round of like $90 million of funding for more expansion and new things. So
amazing. And the founder's still involved, and
absolutely. And so I land in this job not knowing anything really about tech. Now I am the only legal advisor. So it's commercial, it's technology, it's communications law, and it is global.
What an amazing opportunity.
And so I just get dumped in this. And so...
Yeah, but that's perfect for you. Clearly, because, there's no boredom in there. There's like, you've got to learn, you've got to go, you've got to move at a million miles an hour.
Absolutely amazing. And I call that period of my life thumbsuck law, because, I had a good basis in law because of my experience and my studies, etc. But I was completely new to all of this that landed,
But also it feels like it sounds like at that time as the firm, they're going through the second round of funding. There's still that startup vibe.
Exactly.
And maybe it was thumbs up business as well. We're going to do this today.
Exactly. It really was kind of building the plane while you fly.
They had a proper strategy, obviously.
But yes, and it was such a lovely environment, again, where innovation was encouraged, where, and because I was their first in-house counsel, I was also, so I wasn't relegated to the law. I could get involved in product development to make sure that,
the dream job for a lawyer who wants to move in-house. Every single person is always like, I want to get closer to the business. I want to get closer.
Absolutely.
And you had it.
Absolutely. Our mutual friend, Dale Verstaar, I think when he was at DRM, wrote this article once that struck me so much about the difference between firm lawyers and in-house counsel.
Yeah, he did do that, yeah.
And,
shout out, Dale. Good article.
And listen, the metaphor is a bit shaky, but it landed. And it was this like, are you a shepherd or are you a sheepdog? With this idea of like, if you're a sheepdog, you're called in when there's trouble. You're in, you're out, whatever. And if you're the shepherd, you walk with the flock, every sheep, you know in the way that they walk that there's something wrong or that there's whatever. You think about the whole flock as your family. And that's really, I think, why I think I gravitated towards in-house so much, is this really being part of the business, understanding the products, understanding what it is that we're building, understanding where it is that we're going, understanding, what it is that we're trying to achieve, and then figuring out, okay, how do we do this in a way that is compliant? How do we, contract in a way that makes things move faster, etc.
You're just describing the in-house role that almost every single in-house lawyer who's listening to this is dreaming of having, or like, they're probably going to clip it and send it to their board and go, that's what we need to do. You need to get me involved from the very beginning. Because, so that must have been hugely like challenging. And again, though, if you go back to the beginning of your career at Totally Legal, you're there at the beginning of these startups, or very much close to the beginning.
No, they were. No, I mean, listen, Clickatell by then, so that was, say, 2010. So they'd been in the game for about 10 years by then.
But still, in their journey.
It was very much a time of growth and new products, new markets. Trying to figure out how to open a company in Kenya, trying to figure out, what are the communications laws of Nigeria, and very ahead of their time. I mean, we were trying to do things that we were able to do in South Africa, that we were able to do in South Africa, but the telcos elsewhere in Africa didn't have the technical capability.
Probably didn't have the infrastructure
to do some of these things. And so to try and figure out what's possible and what's not, and how do we do it differently, and
it's interesting because at that time we were, myself and Marie, we probably just left Cayman, and I know that there was a company going across the Caribbean at the time called Digicel. And I remember talking to their senior directors, and they were like, again, what you're describing is very similar, but across the Caribbean region. And their biggest problem was not the products and the services they were, it was the infrastructure. Yeah. They were having to go in and actually build the infrastructure alongside, I think it seems to be doing quite well now. They always seem to be, still around. They seem to be on all the sports stuff and the cricket and everything. But going, can we do this? Yeah, legally, but there's no infrastructure. We've got to build that as well. That must be not frightening, but challenging, exciting. Yeah. Well, you went through the same thing.
It was lovely. And so I think that, but I want to say 3.5 years later, after having now come from somewhere where, they had, I started there, they didn't have a legal team before. So it was literally getting risk management policies in place, getting, setting up all of these companies, making sure that we, are compliant with all these laws, whatever. Well, with one person.
Don't we know her?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I think I had dinner with her the other day, and she said, "I used to work." And I was, "Oh, yes."
And then, so when she left, another good friend, what that ended up being another good friend, also joined me. But I think after 3.5 years, we'd built the base, and then I got bored again.
Yeah.
Because now it was kind of business as usual. Now we've done all the hard yards, and things were now running relatively smoothly.
Again, you're not the only one, and this is great for people to listen to, because this is where you're starting to shape your career and find your feet within business, which is clearly you're the startup person. You are that. Yeah. And then you joined Radiant, which was at that time.
Exactly. And so what
right
happened
at the beginning. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so what happened there is that in my boredness, I came across an article about Cognia law. That's also a legal process outsourcing type.
Yeah, based here in Cape Town.
Based in Cape Town. And I took a chance and I emailed Janet, the CEO, and I said to her, listen, this is who I am. I tend to do that, it seems, every now and again.
Well, it's a good tip for people to listen to.
Emailed her directly, just kind of randomly guessed her email address.
Got it right.
And was surprised when she then responded and invited me to what I thought was an interview, but ended up being a test.
That was the test.
That was the test.
We're not going to tell you there's a test.
Yeah, but what was interesting is that she was actually recruiting for Radiant Law, not for Cognia at the time.
Interesting.
And so Alex Hamilton, another great visionary, started Radiant Law.
Yeah, I'll just point out as well to anybody listening, they can find Alex Hamilton and Janet Taylor Hall on all the socials.
Yeah, absolutely.
Follow them. Don't email them.
don't email them.
Certainly follow them.
These were the days before social media.
Alex, I do follow on Twitter. A real leader in that legal tech space.
Absolutely.
But interesting already that what I suppose is possibly competing firms, Radiant and Cognia, helping each other out.
Yeah, but I think they had kind of, and again, yes, competing in a sense. But listen, the pool is big. I always feel like, your competition is also your best friend.
I was going to say the same thing, but it's also something that Leo Mozzelle and I were speaking about. Is this in the legal tech space and the alternative legal services provider space? The attitude is much more of a sharing attitude. Rather, of course, they compete, but it's much more about let's help each other out, and that's great.
Absolutely, and and so so after the test thing, I was invited to an interview on a Saturday morning with Alex had flown in from the UK, and the guys that were going to run the South African office. Were all, they'd gotten a room for the day. They were doing interviews. I was their first interview, and they hired me on the spot.
Brilliant. Poor people sitting up outside in the
no, but no one else was. I don't know. So it was. So they were anyway. So it was absolutely lovely. I think my startup experience, my love of tech, and I mean
personality, attitude.
But anyway, Alex is all about using technology and process to do things quicker, easier, better, cheaper. And yes, it was an interview. They hired two more people on that day. We all ended up getting drunk at Potluck Club. Celebrating. And so, I mean, a few weeks later, they'd secured an office in Westlake, and we started, with what we had. And that was such an incredible journey. Also they had some really, really exciting big name clients in the UK. We were part of their in-house legal teams. It was me, and a few senior lawyers, and then we got these really young junior lawyers that had basically never seen a contract in their lives, that were negotiating and drafting and vetting contracts for these
UK clients,
big UK clients, and it was amazing I loved that the training and the mentoring and all of and all of that. So I absolutely loved it.
And working at a high pace for UK clients, demanding and learning and also at that point as well, which Radiant, from my knowledge, have done very, very well at is what you just said there. Looking at better ways of delivering legal services quicker, and having tech as a key part of
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
And that's something they really lead the way in.
Yeah. And I mean, so this was 2014 and, we were already doing, using contract automation software for clients, to kind of autocomplete from your CRM, for example, or, to tailor your templates depending on what product it is you're selling or whatever. We internally we were using a lot of technology
and trialing some as well.
Absolutely. No, it was lovely, and aside from the actual work and the and that, it was also lovely for me to be at the real start of a startup. Literally figuring out how do we do recruitment, what are our HR policies, like what, who are we, where are we going?
Where do we buy desks from?
Exactly. And so
there is an element of fun in that bit. There is.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's listen, startups isn't for the weak at heart. It's a lot of hours and a lot of stress. And if you have a team that's dependent on you and whatever, I mean, I have so much respect for anybody that starts a business and takes on the financial burden of that. I mean, I didn't have that. At least I was there pulling a salary. I was, putting in the hard yards, but I wasn't ultimately responsible for this team of people. And so I'm in awe of the Radiant founders. And yeah, it was absolutely lovely. I loved it. I loved the clients. I loved the environment. But it was also exhausting.
Yeah.
And
there's no end when you're a startup and you're driven by founders that are, passionate and, have a million ideas.
Absolutely.
There's no end. And I know that because I've been one. There's no end to the drive and the determination to succeed. And it can be exhausting for those around you.
Yeah, and also, I mean, these guys came from big London, big New York firms. The work ethic is just incredible. The attention to detail, it was such an incredible environment and learning experience for me. But it was a lot of hours and listen, but it was me putting that pressure on me,
Yeah.
When I ended up deciding to move on, I had this discussion with Alex, and he was just like, "You should have told me," and I mean, listen, and they were very accommodating with everything, but I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I think I've just burnt myself out.
Yeah, I've seen it before with people who've worked for me. And I think Alex will and other entrepreneurs and business owners will probably adhere to that as well. Is that you don't always spot it, and I think my age now I realised that you with people that are, how do you put it? People can be their own worst enemies sometimes, in the sense that they're so passionate about what they're doing for you, and they're building and helping you build a company, and they believe in it, and they believe in the services and the products that you're putting out there, and that's exactly what you want. But if you don't stop them, they will burn themselves out, and you clearly did.
And listen, I mean, they were also going a million miles an hour. Listen, we had big name clients and more work than and recruitment, as you all know, is not as fast as you think. I mean, and it takes a lot of time.
Otherwise, you're just churning through
exactly
people that last 5 minutes. Yeah.
And also, I mean, to get to the level of quality, you have to make sure that you train people and all of that stuff. So it really is. It was an incredible environment. It really was lovely. But then at some point I was exhausted, but also, even though we got to know our clients really well, I felt that gap of being in the business.
Yeah.
I was
because you had taken a step out gone back to being a service provider.
A service provider, exactly. And we did work very closely with our clients and very much as an integral part of their in-house teams. But yet we weren't on the ground, we weren't. And so I felt that. And so I wanted to go back in-house. And then luckily for me, an ex-colleague from my Clickatell days who was a recruiter, she was working at Acceleration. And when they were looking for a legal advisor, she thought of me. Yeah.
And now Acceleration was that in the advertising space?
Yeah. So Acceleration is another South African startup success story. I caught them in their more mature days. So they started in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s, started doing kind of Google ad type products and services and implementations, Google AdWords, all of those kind of things, became really big marketing tech resellers, implementation partners. And then also
when literally no one understood Google.
Exactly. And then also started doing really high level marketing, technology and data consulting. And when I joined them, they had just been not fully acquired, but the WPP Group is a massive global advertising group that owns many of the well-known agencies over the world, across the world. They had purchased a stake in Acceleration when I had and so it was kind of around at that time that I joined. And so it really was that space of kind of this scrappy startup now having to kind of start conforming with the big corporate,
becoming corporate,
big corporate ship. And so that was also a really interesting learning curve.
Challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say I stayed there long enough that, I was there when it was still kind of startup and all the way to absolutely corporate,
massive.
Which was also a big learning curve for me, and amazing to see, and just reaffirmed to me my that I'm more of a scrappy startup.
And then you sort of navigated through the WPP environment, which takes us up to nicely to the present day. But yeah, I can think of the firms that I've been at, and I remember one when I first started in recruitment in London. I worked for a firm that had done really, really well, that scrappy startup kind of vibe, and then they were bought out by a big American group just as I was joining. So similar to you, but I remember they had I think what they call in the US a town hall, so where all the staff got to stand in front of the CEO and a few other senior directors and ask very direct questions, which I had just joined, so I didn't have anything to say. But it was interesting. It still stuck with me because one of the questions was, how are we going to keep the culture that we've built? If and then obviously they spoke about, nothing's going to change and everything, but it inevitably does. And I actually, funnily enough, because in my career, I started, my first job out of university was in mergers and acquisitions, so in an M&A department. And the one thing I learned immediately is that as soon as you get bought, things change.
Things change, yeah.
They will. Yeah. That's the whole purpose of them buying you, is so that they can implement their own processes. So that is interesting. But look, what I'm seeing here, and I hope the listeners and the watchers are also getting the idea of, is someone who is not afraid of a challenge, not afraid to change things for whatever reason that may be, whether it's boredom or whether it's
mostly,
but someone who's also brave and backs themselves, and also from a very early age, almost from studying. In fact, definitely from studying onwards, someone who's recognized that in themselves, that they're tying the law into business, and it's business that really drives you. And like you say, that sort of scrappy startup is kind of your niche spot. I think I said to you a while back, I vaguely remember saying something to you about that's going to be your area until you retire in the future. So anyone globally that needs someone with legal understanding that is a build-up phase, call Karien, because I think in the future you'll make it, that'll be a nice consultancy for you. But look, this is something that I really want to shine a light on, which is the business you're involved in now, which is AgriRevolution. It's it's largely your family's business, and you touched on it earlier with your father having the idea for the invention. And really what I want to get to is the fact that, again, showing someone in the law, someone who has created their career both in service providing, practice, in-house largely, startups, more mature businesses, you've someone who's not been afraid to take different directions. You're now embarking on what, and I'm not joking here, seems to be, and I'm not just saying because we're friends, obviously, but the invention, I know nothing about farming. Obviously, I'm in one of the farming capitals of the world, but I know nothing about it. This townie from South London doesn't know how to, barely know how to dig a hole, let alone farm. But the invention that you and your father came up with, that you are now taking to market, and it is a revolution. And I will put the link to the video and below, because I think everybody. Well, I watched the video on the website this morning, which features your father and your brother and maybe another person, uncle, but other people, and also customers, people in wine farms that have used the and for clarity, the product's called Earthworm, right? Yeah. And what it does for the world of farming, what it does for the world in general, in terms of climate change, in terms of an expanding population with less room. I'm going to be just spouting what's on the video in a minute, but I want you to tell us. First of all, I'm very interested in the fact that you're going more into this space now. But please, for the listeners, tell us about the product and the company, please.
Sure. Yes.
Start from the beginning. Please tell us what your dad came up with the idea and.
Sure. So, so as I said, my dad had started a soil preparation company where he had big tractors, bulldozers, whatever and so he prepared soil for farmers before they planted whatever crops.
Yeah. So for the uninitiated, he would assist the farmers, huge, great land, to prepare the soil to be ready to be
for planting. Exactly. And through this time, and also during his time at Constantia, he kept on coming to this place where you could do everything above the ground you could, but what really made the biggest changes to yield increases, to quality of fruit, etc., was when he started doing interventions in the soil, so underground. And in his mind, he came up with this thought that what if you could have like a concrete mixer underneath the ground, because then you could use the depth dimension of your soil. So instead of your roots only growing 20 centimeters deep in the topsoil, what if you could make topsoil of like a meter or 1.2 meters deep?
So expand the topsoil, and by the cement mixer analogy, you mean sort of constantly turning it,
like homogeneously mixing in whatever whatever is missing from that soil. So if you can analyze it beforehand, you can figure out what's missing to make it really fertile. Now, if you had a way to mix that all in a homogeneous way,
and get to that level
and get that deep, how amazing would that be for plants? He was also part of an experiment at Niet experimental farm in Stellenbosch in the 80s, where they literally, I always say they dug a swimming pool. They dug a 20 meter by 20 meter square, up to 1.2 meters deep or a meter deep. They took out all the soil. They tested it. They put in fertilizers and whatever other ameliorants they thought was needed, and they put it all back into this hole. Then they took a single vine and they planted it right in the middle. And this vine grew massively. They put up pillars and it just grew massively. By the end of 4 years, that vine's roots had spread throughout that swimming pool, right to the edges of where they had put in
just 4 years.
In just 4 years. And after 4 years, they harvested, in 1 year, 1,000 kilograms, a whole ton of grapes from this one vine. Now, generally, a vine produces, I don't know, depending on where you are, a lot of factors, but say 3, roughly 4, 5 kilograms. 3 or 4
wow.
kilograms versus 1,000. And
what year did they do this?
This was in the 80s.
Okay.
So this was in the 80s when they did this, and they did this they did the mixing and stuff by hand. Okay,
Yeah, of course.
At the time, and also they made wine from the grapes from this single vine.
Oh, so they were wine grapes rather than
they were
table
wine grapes, and it came out in the top 5% in blind tastings. So the quality was great, and the yield was just incredible. And so this is really, I think, where my dad's idea of the concrete mixer came about, was like, so if you could do that for every farmer, what amazing results.
For other crops. Yeah.
Exactly.
Own the future of recruitment today. Access a secured, anonymized global talent pool. Connect with qualified candidates through multiple private label databases. By creating your own Stintit, you can achieve the following. Step 1. Access your company dashboard by logging in. Step 2. Click Find Candidate to search for the ideal candidate. To begin, create a new position and fill in the necessary details. The system will search through multiple databases to find the ideal match for you. Step 3. Once the search is completed, you will instantly receive multiple 100% matches, which have all been fully verified and KYC checked. Step 4. When the candidate chooses to opt in, you can view their skill set and experience. Only when you are satisfied, use your credit to unlock the candidate's full profile. Once unlocked, the profile remains unlocked for all future searches. What makes this system truly revolutionary is that when you search, the search will continue in all the different databases until a 100% match is found. Each database involved and the candidate share in the revenue, and that's how this circular revenue model and shared database benefit all parties involved.
Thank you. Well, we've just had a little interlude. But where we left off was you were talking about the experiment with the earthworm, or certainly the theory behind it in the 80s that your dad had, and the incredible results in just a small patch of land, specifically for, at that point, grapes for wine rather than table grapes. And then your dad having that thought process of what else if it can do it for this, then surely it can be done on any type of land for any type of product, right? Now, I know it's probably too much to ask, but in the next 40 years until now, where have we been with this incredible invention?
So, listen. So my dad had this thought about it in the 80s, but it was only really in the kind of late 90s that he came up with a solution that he thought could work. And so when I was 16, 17, he had a guy build him like a small scale model of what he calls rotational penetration. So we're working on the term.
Spitballing some ideas around
that. So, and it's a way that he's figured out of, in a really energy efficient way, mixing soil really deeply. Because the problem is, the deeper you go, exponentially, the power needed to move under the soil becomes more and more and more. And so he figured out a way to do that in a really energy efficient way. And so he built this model, and it showed him enough that he was convinced that this will work. And so he then, from scrap, made a life-size model. So when I was in matric, he made this life-size model that he had at the back of a tractor, and that, that dug itself into the ground and could mix the soil. Very basic.
We're talking like proper tape and
exactly.
like nothing fancy.
In Afrikaans, we would say spoeg en plak, like literally like spitting, like
so like, he's put it all together himself. Yeah,
and it worked. It worked. but it fell apart like minutes later kind of thing. And so that set him off on this course of
I'm going to make this work.
I'm going to make this work. Yeah. And so over the course of many years, he somehow scraped together the money to build 3 working prototypes. He did more than 1,000 hectares of work with these prototypes.
All in the Western Cape? Or
mostly in the Western Cape, but he also did some work for mine rehabilitation in Richards Bay. Incredible results restoring soil that was completely depleted through mining.
So again, I'm simplifying this for the non-farmer, but rehabilitating land that's obviously, I guess, near destroyed by mining, but actually getting it to a point where it could be used for farming again.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my word, that's amazing.
That's amazing. Exactly. Yeah. And so, and the other thing about what he wanted to do was he wanted to build something that's narrow enough to go into existing orchards and vineyards. Because when you farm with something like citrus or apples or vineyards, whatever it is, you plant your tree, your baby tree, your seeds. I don't know. It was usually a baby tree or a small vine. And then it takes a few years, 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, whatever, for the plant to reach full production. Then you have a few years of great production. But then over time, your soil gets more and more compacted.
Yeah,
that
makes sense.
And then your yield your production starts declining. And at some point, often, mostly, you then get to a point where you're making too little money from this block, and you have to take it all out. It makes more sense financially for you to take it all out, re-prepare the soil, plant a whole new orchard,
and
plant a whole new orchard, and start from scratch. But that means that now you've had a few years of declining returns, plus now you have the cost of replanting. And now you have another 4, 5, whatever years before the new plants are back into production. So my dad's question was, what if you could go in, regenerate the soil, cut off the roots, and give them a whole new home to flourish in? And
effectively work around the roots
not around. Cut through them, and then they will.
Okay, so actually get rid of the debt as you would in your own garden.
In your own garden,
exactly. Flourish down there. You can do the same thing.
Prune the roots, and he had amazing results, incredible results with these previous models. But then, it really has just been years of bootstrapping, trying new things, trying different angles, coming up with new ways to solve some of the challenges that he experienced. And that ultimately led to him coming up with registering 2 new patents that solves all of these challenges that he'd encountered. And then in 2020, and this is really when I started becoming more involved. My brother Yaku has been very involved with the development of the machine, etc., for many years. And my dad and his business partner Louis, the 3 of them had worked on this for many years. So in 2020, they had reached the end of quite a drawn-out application process for funding with the Technology and Innovation Agency of South Africa.
Okay.
And so literally, I want to say seconds before lockdown,
Please remember that.
the funding was approved. And so I became involved because in the negotiations, the contract negotiations with DIA, and then
and your IP expertise and your commercial,
all of those things. But my point is that's kind of what drew me into the business. But then once I was in, there was no getting out. But I was also, I've been so passionate about this. The earthworm is my baby sister.
It's been a part of your life since you were
since I was a kid. Absolutely.
But I think. Again, I'm going to say it again. We're going to put the link to the video and to your website, the company website, down below. And I advise anybody that's watching this to watch the video. It's 6 minutes long. And again, I watched it again this morning in preparation for today. But you sit there again as a layman, as a business person, but as a layman who doesn't farm, sitting there going, how is this not a thing already? How is this not been in, like, how is this not the norm? And just off camera, as we were waiting for the electricity to boot up again, you used a great word, which is, when we were talking about your dad's involvement and since his inception, the idea 40 years ago, you can't leave because you're compelled, and because it will work, but it will
make a difference.
Genuinely make the world a better place. Now, I say that, and I know that people will immediately go, ugh, because this is what we hear all the time. And, I'm the type of person who likes to be given information. I'm neither, avid, there's climate change happening, we must do something about it. And I'm neither the other way, a climate denier. I'm in the middle going, right, tell me more. But I watched that video again, and some of those things make sense. Increasing population in highly dense areas, running out of good quality farmland, the farming practices as they are at the moment, as you just sort of mentioned there, in terms of there's little option but to let it go fallow and then come back and replant. The need to regenerate mining areas or areas that maybe for one reason or another can't be farmed in. The earthworm answers all of that, right?
It does. And I mean, listen, this is probably not what your listeners tune in for. But yes, absolutely. I mean, we absolutely believe that it's going to change the way that we farm in ways that brings us more in line with nature. I mean, the on top of the effect that this machine and what it does has on roots and on plants, it also now gives us a means of actually mixing carbon into the soil. And I mean, the soil is the biggest carbon sink other than the ocean. And imagine what we can do to climate change if every hectare of agricultural land can become a carbon sink. I mean, I watched that video. I was like, well, this is the answer. This is, it's not the answer, but it's an answer to a lot of things that we all read about. But also, perhaps it's something that makes other people think of new ways, better ways, whatever. Even if this is just the start, even if this just lights a fire in someone else's mind,
Well, that's exactly. Sorry, go on. Yeah? I was just going to say that you say there that this is probably not what our listeners listen in for, but it is exactly, because what I've always wanted to do is shine a light on South African legal professionals who are then going on to do something different. What you're doing is you're branching into a whole new area. Obviously, clearly, it is something that's within your family, but this is not a product that will be gone tomorrow. This is something that really actually has the ability to improve the world. And that's why I know from personal conversations, you are talking to a number of organizations across the world that are deeply interested in the product, and not just investors, but governments and government organizations that are, wow, okay, let's look at this and let's see what we can do. Because as we all know from everything we read, governments all over the world are worried about what the future might hold, certainly from a climate change perspective and from a feeding perspective.
Yes.
But okay, well, I mean, what are the next steps for you and your journey with AgriRevolution?
So I've been, as I said, I've been kind of evenings, early mornings, weekends I've spent for the past 3-4 years. I've spent really working very closely with my dad, my brother, and the team. And since April, I am now full-time at AgriRevolution, which is the biggest privilege of my life. I get to work with my family every day. We get to... Your
family are really nice, but I mean, some people can work with their family and go...
But listen, if you have a shared dream, and a shared passion and a shared purpose,
Well, I said to you off camera, didn't I? Again, watching that video this morning, you can see it certainly in your brother's eyes. You can see that, like, that passion for their business and for the product and what it can do for the world, like a genuine improvement. And the proof is there clearly. That, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, but the trials that have been done not on the land, but just on the crops as well. Like, yeah, but, you know,
yeah, we think it's a no-brainer, but then, I mean, we always joke and say my brother and I have been brainwashed since we were children. So
you will like this, and it will work.
Not at all. No, but I mean, my dad's always been, because he's so passionate about it. I mean, like, this is what we talk about in my family.
Every Christmas.
Every dinner, every lunch, every Christmas, every phone call.
But it's not that easy to get funding. It's not that easy to get the message out there, is it? I mean, and you know, the organizations that you would have to work with to get it to market, as you are doing now globally, they move slow. We're talking about governments and government entities and farming entities. You know, there is a slowness, not for the lack of desire, but just because of the way that they're set up.
But then I think also, and I think something that my dad is amazing at, and you talked earlier about me saying that we were compelled, but so my dad would often say that when he got this idea, when he saw the solution, he knew what this was going to be. And every day he has this amazing thing that he goes to bed every night with a question, believing that in the morning he will have the answer. And if it's not tomorrow morning, it'll be the morning after. And this is really where, you know, he's kept on innovating over all of these years. And he has this unwavering belief knowledge that this thing that he saw the answer to other people are going to see that answer at some point. And he's seen this machine in his mind's eye working, changing lives, changing the lives of farmers, of rural communities. I mean,
farming in general, and
so this is the thing, is like, once you've seen that, you are compelled to be part of it. It's just a no-brainer.
Well, yeah, because you've got the opportunity here. I mean, again, I don't say this thing lightly. You know, you've got something in front of you that will genuinely change the world and the way that people. Like you said, rural communities, jobs, the way that we eat, what can happen to the land, the regeneration, looking after climate change and climate control and carbon, and it answers so many things. You could never walk away from that. And I could see why your dad is sitting there for years going, well, it's just a matter of time.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. I think from a career perspective from you, which, you know, your career is. And I know the listeners will love hearing your whole journey, because it's so like brave and wonderful, and you've changed and you've adapted, and one day you'll sit there and write a book. But you know, from a small, all the way from a small website to big law firms, banks, to the farm. You know, there's a book in there. But there might be a movie in it for your dad, actually. Like, you know, when you said about the wine tasting, you know, coming in the top 5% of that land, I thought of that wonderful film with Alan Rickman where they did the blind tasting for the American wine. I can't remember what it's called now, but really wonderful movie. And I was like, oh my word, maybe, of course, won't want to be in a star in a Hollywood movie just yet, but you never know. But what I'm trying to say is that you've got, from a career perspective, anyone listening to this, what you've got, what the calling that your dad has and the opportunity that you have with AgriRevolution is, you know, it's a kind of once in a lifetime opportunity, in the sense that, and I would advise anyone that listens to this, if you've got a feeling, if you've got something inside you that you, however big, small, not everyone is going to have the opportunity that your family have, which is to change many, many lives. But even if it's just change their own life, to do it, just do it. Absolutely. Take a leaf out of Karien's book and be brave and do it, because don't ever leave yourself wondering what if. And it's some of the advice I often give people when I'm doing the career coaching and stuff like that.
And Rob, listen, I absolutely agree with you. at the same time, and not disagreeing with you, I want to say that I haven't been that brave.
Well, it appears to me. Yeah.
In the sense that, I mean, this was 3 years of clinging on to a salary in a job that I enjoyed initially, but it was, as I said earlier, becoming more and more corporate. More and more boxed in, and less and less of what I found rewarding. But so I was going to say is also things aren't overnight successes. Changes don't have to, you don't have to be brave and then tomorrow your life is going to be different, but if there is something that you're passionate about and you believe in, I absolutely agree that, if you start taking steps toward it, somehow things work out.
That's perfect advice for the people that are out there, because I know from the feedback that we've had about the podcast that people who listen and then wonderfully, and thank you so much for feeling compelled to write an email myself or LinkedIn message or whatever it might be, or the team, that they're inspired by stories that like yours, which is, I'm saying brave, you're saying calculated risk perhaps, but it's it's trusting yourself and trusting your gut, and for those who are potentially listening to this thinking, well, I should start that business or I should follow that dream, but you won't regret trying it, and that's what your dad and your brother and yourself are doing now, and I'm not just saying this because I don't say these things lightly. This is another South African success story that everybody's going to be knowing before you know it. But it's also just what you said there. It's perfect advice to sort of end on. I think I want to thank you for coming in and talking to me today and sharing your journey. I keep using the word brave, but you've made calculated decisions. You've trusted your gut. You've trusted your instincts. You've had an incredible career that's taken you through different industries and different countries and different and dealing with companies on a global scale. You obviously get a thrive on that startup environment, and now you've got effectively your very own as well. So thank you so much for coming in. Good luck with everything, and I'll see you very soon.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you so much for the platform. I think I've enjoyed your podcast and your conversations with your other listeners so much. And so I think that my story is perhaps not everybody's cup of tea, but I believe that there are probably people out there that have similar stories. And so please continue doing what you're doing. I've loved listening to it.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for the opportunity.